Let's get ready to rumble!
Hello, and welcome to Netflix vs. Cinema, the podcast that is very tired, that's had a long day, and is currently trying to keep eyes open. My name is Tosin, I am your host, and I am based up in Coventry, in the Midlands. And joining me on the Isle of Wight are Sharon.
Hello.
And joining me from Bournemouth are Shaun.
Hello there, hiya. I will be back on the island shortly.
You'll be back on the island shortly?
Oh.
Shortly, yeah.
How shortly are
Have
we
you
talking?
got a date for your moving?
I should be back for like the 31st, so the end of the month really, 1st of June.
Okay, so
Okay.
it's over. Oh wow. Oh, that's
next
soon.
week.
Yeah, not this weekend, next weekend. So
Yeah, how's your? Okay. We're just gonna have a little bit because apparently this is mental health awareness week. So I'm just gonna ask questions like, how's your mom gonna do with that? How's your mom gonna feel with that? With you heading back?
that's it. Well, I think we've spoken about it, and I think she's going to be okay. And we're hoping that they relax the restrictions a little bit more. So, maybe my sister or maybe be able to keep a little bit more of an eye on things.
Yeah.
But we'll see how it goes anyway. See how it goes. So
Because I know you had a place lined up to live, so you moving into that house that you're offered.
Yeah. So
Oh, well, that's good then.
the thing is, they want me back at work as well. So I got some work. So I got a phone call
All right.
from them. So, and I thought,
All right.
I thought, as they've been paying me, I can't really say no, can I? Really?
Yeah, even though I'm gonna be honest with you, Shaun, it does look like you have a pretty nice setup down in Bournemouth. It looks like you have a pretty sweet setup because for those of you who do not know, it was Shaun's birthday recently. In the past week, we celebrated Shaun's birthday. Sharon, shall we do a very, very, because it's over Zoom, a very convoluted and totally disjointed happy birthday thing?
Yep, I'm sure we can manage to clash quite perfectly.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, cool. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Shawnee. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you so much, guys. That's really, really kind of you. Really kind. We were due. Well, as we were due to have a big party, but
Yeah, because you had the same because Tosin led the way this year with his ending with a naught birthday.
Yeah.
Yep,
and I had my ending with a naught birthday, and then it was your ending with a naught birthday. So we were planning on having a big
naughty birthday
surprise. Well, a big karaoke party, weren't we? I was looking forward to singing Islands in the Stream with you.
Yeah.
Or something equally.
Yeah. Well, perhaps we'll postpone it till November, and then you can all come along with the November one. How are you fixed for November?
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
Well, at the moment, November's wide open because nothing else is going to be happening then.
That's right.
So it's not as if we have any other plans to come with other things. Oh no, but yeah, happy birthday for that, Shaun. As always, hope it was in better circumstances. But so very soon we'll be able to say essentially we're going to cut Bournemouth out of our Netflix or cinema thing. It's just going to be Coventry, Midlands, Isle of Wight. Sorry, Bournemouth. You were there for a while, but now you're gone.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Who knows? You might return. You never know. You never know.
Yeah, it might do.
Happen.
It might do. So on Netflix vs. Cinema, as the name implies, if this is the first time you're listening to the show, and it has, I'll explain in a second, but it's been brought to my attention that there are actually people who just listen to the show, and the first time they listen to one of these episodes when they listen to one of these episodes, it might be the first time they ever heard us. So you might think Netflix vs. Cinema, what on earth are you talking about? We're in a lockdown, there's no cinema, how does this show keep going? And we would usually go watch a couple of things on Netflix, watch a few things in cinema, weigh them up against each other, and then we'll figure out where have we had the best time this week, what has provided better bang for our buck. Is cinema dying because Netflix is just everywhere, or does cinema still have something to offer? Now, cinemas have been taken away from us. We have declared Netflix the winner for, I thought it was going to be for the rest of 2020, although cinemas are fighting, and they're trying to come back mid-July. There's this whole talk about cinemas trying to come back mid-July, and even when they mentioned the lessening of the restrictions, the lockdown restrictions, did you guys notice that on the graph at the end there was a cinema thing with a cinema ticket stub in it? Yeah.
I haven't seen that. So what was that? So run that past me one more time.
Okay, so when Boris Johnson came on TV and he said, okay, we're going to be releasing some restrictions. In phase 1, you can go out and the whole really complicated thing he said, they had that arc that sort of like goes up high and then sort of like has like a slow slope. And in phase 3, they mentioned the other things that you'd be allowed to do. And that was where they had the restaurants and the takeaways and things like that. And they also,
there was cinema.
And there was a stub. There was like a ticket stub, like the sort of
wow, was it really?
School
Yeah,
stub that says like admit 1 or something like that on it. There was an old school ticket stub in there, and it was
theatres and cinemas are at the end of the list, but they're there.
Yeah, they are there and they're part of the plan. So much so that superfan Nina sent me a screen grab from her. No, I think she filmed her TV and she was like, "Oh my God, did you see it? Did you see it? Ticket stubs, cinemas, they're coming back." But then,
that's as long as that downward trend continues, though, isn't it? It's got to be that downward trend. So the R rate or the R whatever.
Yes, as long as the downward trend continues, that was the idea, that they will bring cinemas back, and I think cinemas are pushing for mid-July. However, the next day, when another minister was doing the sort of coronavirus briefing, the ticket stub wasn't there. So they had the plates for the restaurants. They had like the drinking thing for like a milkshake cup, but they didn't have the ticket stub. So I was like, ooh, ominous.
It's ominous. I'll tell you, it does make you wonder. Like, oh, sorry. Yeah.
No, sorry, Shaun. I just realized that I interrupted myself giving an explanation of what we're doing on the show called Netflix Cinema. So, Shaun, please hold that thought. Hold on to that thought.
I will try and remember that thought.
Yeah, that was what I was like. Please remember it. Hold on to it. And so what we're doing on the show, Netflix Cinema, is that for the first part of the show, we've split into 3 parts now. First part of the show, we'll talk about what our viewing habits have been like in the lockdown. So, because that will be Netflix and Friends. So, Netflix streaming things, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, BBC iPlayer, normal TV. Wow, who knew? Talking Pictures has actually made more and more of an experience on this show. The second part, we're going to talk about cinemas. What we do with cinemas is a celebration of cinema where we interview somebody, usually a cinephile, usually a massive film buff, and we just ask them a couple of questions, but we'll get to those later. And then in the third bit, we talk about what's happened there and maybe answer some questions ourselves. So, Shaun, what were you going to say?
No, I was just thinking, it was like, have you ever seen that? Or recent? It was a recent movie called The Happening with Mark Wahlberg.
Mark Wahlberg, yeah. Mark Wahlberg talks to plants.
Yeah. Well, when I watched in the news, and it's all about this, and all the countries are unlocking, Italy's unlocking, Greece unlocking, Spain, and I wondered if perhaps it's not some sort of thing. Perhaps it was just like this strange happening that happened all over the world, and it's going to. It's just going around. Again. You know what I mean?
I'll tell you what my wife thinks. My wife thinks that this year might be the year of the biblical plague.
Yeah, really?
Because if you read in the Bible, you read about the story of the biblical
Revelation.
Plagues.
Is that in Revelation? All that?
No, the plagues are in Old Testament. They're early on. They're
Old Testament.
They're Moses.
They're Moses.
Oh yeah.
Either Genesis
that was
or Exodus.
Like God's of it. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, with the toads and the plague.
Yeah, or even in the Ten Commandments, Charlton Heston does the whole thing. The plagues show up, and so it's the fact that at the beginning of the year you had the Australian bushfires, and those were like going all over the place. Then you had all these storms coming and smashing. So I mean, in the UK, there's some people who have had it bad because they've been smashed by 2 storms in a row, had the livelihood, and then the coronavirus showed up. So you had wildfires, storms. This virus comes in and messes up the whole world, and now we have swarms of locusts that are
devouring
things in East Africa.
Of the world. Yeah,
and you're thinking, this is all sounding very familiar. This is all sounding.
When we start getting gnats and flies and things, I'm not going to be happy.
Yeah, when the River Thames overflows and there's frogs everywhere, we know where.
And then rivers of blood. That'd be nice.
But rivers of blood. Isn't that really weird? Because I'm sure, I know that's like, is that in what book of the Old Testament is that in then, the plagues? Is that the first one, Genesis?
It's either end of Genesis or beginning of Exodus.
All right, okay. So, but I mean, with Revelation, because
by Exodus is all about the Israelites leaving Egypt, and the reason they left Egypt was because of the plagues. So yeah. So yeah, carry on, Shaun. Welcome to Bible Talk. Welcome to Bible Talk with Tosin, Sharon, and Shaun.
One of these. I found a little group, and it was good. It is what you see, and it was all like comic captions from the pre-comic code authority and all that, and like suggestive things, and it is.
Was this,
it's called,
you found a group on Facebook?
It's a group, yes. It is. You see what you see, so it could be. It's like double entendre sort of things, like something might be holding something. And anyway, we won't go into it. But it was really, really funny. But someone put in from a magazine from. Someone said it was the 50s, and I said no because it's LBJ, so it's got to be 60s. But it was like a racist thing. It was like it had face. It said you got to say who you like and who you didn't, and it was like, what do you think of Catholics? What do you think of atheists? What do you think of Jews? What do you think of? Yeah, and it was just this whole thing from. It was about. I reckon it must have been about 1963 or something, and it was in a comic, and it was trying to make people aware of. It's real interesting stuff, just like this thing. Why would they put that in a comic,
Oh, so, yeah, it was a bit like a bit of a McCarthy thing where you could like the witch hunts.
Yeah, you could see if you was, who you liked, if you didn't like, if you were tolerant and all that. So you had if you picked, you had about 5 different choices of little boxes with little smiley faces in or sad faces or whatever, and then it would tell you at the end. It was like you have those psychological things we'll answer these 10 questions and we can tell you if you're a geek or not.
Yeah. So it's answer these 10 questions. I will tell you how racist you are.
Yeah, or that's it exactly. Or you answer these questions. What Star Wars character asked you? You ask that type of thing. But yeah, no, I was thinking, my God, nowadays that would be well. Terrifying. It'd be horrid, wouldn't it? They wouldn't. Yeah, and it was but it was accepted. It was accepted in those days.
It was accepted. It was accepted. Oh, all right. Now, okay. Now with that, let's go into our viewing habits. What we've been watching. But first of all, I was talking about the fact that people might be listening to this, and something happened this week that brought home to me that people actually do listen to stuff that you say when you put it out there. So I had somebody called Lisa Smith get in touch with me. It was just like a random Facebook Messenger thing that came through this week. And it was like, Facebook gets in touch with you and it just sort of says, oh, hi, this person wants to connect with you. And every now and then you get that, and it's either somebody who wants to sell you something, or every now and then it might be some picture of a woman who you're pretty sure is not the person who sent you the message, if you get what I mean. So, but this
I get those. It's normally men in uniform for some reason. I get people who are pretending to be American colonels who suddenly want to be my friend. It's I don't quite believe that this American colonel is seeking friends across the world.
Yeah, I wish that's what I was getting. You see, what I usually get is some toned woman with a 6-pack in a bikini, and usually with bad language, or no bad language, but broken English, and saying, oh yeah, I want to be your friend. There's loads more girls where I come from, that kind of stuff. Yeah. And just kind of no, no, thank you. But this time round, I got a message from a lady called Lisa Smith, and it says, I have just discovered your podcast. They don't make them like they used to, and I am really enjoying it.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. So for those of you who are listening to this and might not have heard this before, so Shaun and I, and you'll hear it in the interview that we did with somebody else later on, the three of us have been pretty much doing this podcast. I've been doing podcast every Thursday for about 6 years.
6 years, crazy.
I know, it's absolutely crazy. It's absolutely crazy because I'll still be like, yeah, Shaun and Sharon, they're like, new friends. But when you say we've been doing podcasts for 6 years, you're thinking, oh, maybe we are old friends. So it's and she came across They Don't Make Them Like They Used To. This is the first podcast that we did together, and she was like, I was like, oh, how did you come across it? She was having a 50s movie marathon, and Guys and Dolls was the last movie she watched. She'd forgotten how much she loved it, and Gene Simmons is the most adorable pisshead. In brackets, she twerks before it became a thing. And I thought, why is there no podcast celebrating old movies? So I found you on Spotify. Then she writes, Day of the Jacket. I think she might mean Day of the Jackal. Unless there is a film called Day of the Jacket, is a favorite of mine. So I'm listening to it next. I don't remember us ever doing that, but apparently there's a episode of that. But she has just streamed A Letter to Three Wives on Amazon Prime. Now,
wow! That's one of your recommendations. I saw that one on your recommendations. Yeah.
If anybody, okay,
now Douglas.
Yeah, Kirk Douglas. If anybody's listening to this, and I know that there's sometimes on this podcast where we kind of switch and we become a little bit more like, we almost become like, the advertising thing for They Don't Make Them Like They Used To, because we talk about it quite a bit on the podcast. But bear with us a little bit. So Let's Three Wives is my hidden gem, like ever, one of my biggest hidden gem picks. It's like, if you've never seen this film, track it down somewhere, find it out. It is awesome. Joseph L. Mankiewicz, because the year before, All About Eve. And she said that, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this woman is speaking her language. So apparently she just sort of came across us, and then she says, so I was kind of like, oh yeah, it's like, how did they don't make it like they used to lead you to me? It's like, how did you find me on Facebook from that? Because I didn't remember putting a link in there. And she goes, don't worry, I'm not a loon. Well, I am, but I'm harmless. I'm a digger and I'm nosy. So I Googled you to see what other stuff you've done and if you've done anything else. So when I'm work later, I'll listen to Netflix versus cinema.
Hey.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's even cooler.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. So it's kind of like, so that makes me think, oh, you know what? People do actually listen to this, and people actually do find this. Oh wow, that's kind of cool. So Lisa, hopefully, will be on a later. She will be on a later show, and she'll be one of the interviewees. I mean, just sort of digging a bit more into this and how on earth, like, you know, how on earth she found us. But just randomly out there, you put stuff out there, people find you. So just wanted to let you know, Shaun, Sharon, somebody listened to your voices and they like them.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
The other thing is, okay, with what has started becoming another sort of like side feature of this show, of trying to figure out what people look like based on what they sound like. I'm not sure whether you guys noticed. Did you see Yatish responded with a picture of what he looked like on Facebook?
No, I didn't. I haven't seen it yet.
I saw that picture. Yeah, sorry, my brother just called me on my phone. That's why I had to went off. It's funny. Yes, I saw that picture. He is not. He doesn't look much like 50 Cent, does he?
No, he doesn't look anything like 50 Cent. Like that. He looks nothing like 50 Cent.
I don't think I'm very good at this game.
So yeah, he looks nothing like 50 Cent. And yeah, Shaun, you gotta have a look at it and see how different he looks from what you thought he looked like. We're waiting on Sandy.
Yeah.
We're waiting on Sandy from last week to see what she thinks of what you guys said. Yeah, what have you been watching?
Okay, so I've sort of, as I say, basically because my mum watches the TV.
Yep.
She watches The Chase and all like headheads and that. So what I do is I sit on my computer with the headphones, and I generally, so I can look at that. I can, because she has the subtitles on the TV.
Yep.
So I might occasionally say, I do love Richard Osman's House of Games. So occasionally I'll shout. So I'll be watching something on YouTube. Like, what have I been watching? I've been watching hypothetical. It's a weird thing to watch, isn't it? Hypothetical, like if Australia versus New Zealand in a conventional war, who would win? And if China took on the USA, and it's all that sort of stuff. And then so the other one was all World War II stuff. This thing called Mark Felton Productions, which is like the last air battle of the World War II, and that's. I mean, there's just so much stuff on there, really. Yeah. I'm tempted to, just spend. The trouble is, it's like going down a rabbit hole, isn't it? The more the more you click, the more comes out. It says this might interest you. This might interest you. A bit like Netflix. So it goes, because you watched this,
and it's amazing where you can end up when you follow those things. Can you click on those links? It's amazing where you end up. You can end up watching some really random stuff, and you think, "How on earth did I get here from where I was?" I know.
But but I mean, it is great that you, like you say, go down the rabbit hole, because there was a thing that was all about Hollywood. Like, because I was saying on the Western things, and I'll probably do a post tonight. But it was saying who was the fastest draw in Hollywood. Out of all the Hollywood stars, and it was like Sammy Davis Jr. Would you believe? Consistently was a top draw, because they have this, and Jerry Lewis and Sammy Davis Jr. and then Glenn Ford, but they have this. Apparently, it started off in 1958 in Knott's Berry Farm, which is in California, and it was like they have this competition where they had the fastest draw, and like all the Hollywood cowboys and that used to go and see, they could say he was the fastest. So, but for about 4 years running, it was Sammy Davis Jr.
Oh wow,
fastest, fastest real draw sort of thing. So
right. Yeah. And Sharon, what have you been watching?
Well, I've been on Netflix, and I finished watching the season 4 of The Last Kingdom, which is based on a Bernard Cornwell series of books about the Kingdom of Wessex. It's like started off with King Alfred, and it's now moved on to King Athelstan and his descendants. Yep. So yeah, I've been watching that. A bit of historical drama.
How historical accurate is it?
Oh, probably not at all.
Right. I love the way you said that.
Because it's all joined together by this. It's joined
Sharon's
together by
great.
this
She's
one
just like,
character called Uhtred, and obviously he's fictitious. So, well, they do have Uhtred in history books, but this Uhtred manages to get basically everywhere. He's at every major battle, he sees every major event, and he happens to be, in the centre of all the goings on about the whole the battles between the Vikings and the Saxons. This is before the Normans were in the picture. This is like that about 150 years before the Norman conquest. It's the big battles fought across England's soil was with the Vikings versus the Saxons. And bear in mind that the Saxons were invaders from about 150 years before that. So it's basically one set of invaders fighting another set of invaders before the final set of invaders come along.
Is it
kind of like the Normans?
Is it kind of like, I don't know what that period of time is called, but is it kind of like, the Forrest Gump of that time period, just showing up at all these major things, just sort of showing up? It's like, I happen to be here, I met this guy, I met that guy.
He does, but he's not in a comedic way, but he happens to be the greatest warrior, he's the greatest lover, he's the greatest fighter, and he basically he's in there all the major historical events of the day, so he does manage to swashbuckle his way around. That's and cool. It's called the Dark Ages. That period is called the Dark Ages because it's the time of the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, so we know a bit about it, but it's very biased what we know. We only know it from one side because the Vikings were not writers, they weren't chroniclers, they told everything verbally, so it's Dark Ages because we don't have a lot of written history about that period of time apart from the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle.
You Sharon, you need to see this program documentary. It was called In Search of King Arthur, and it was about Tintagel, and it was saying, and it went up to Northumbria, and it went up to fantastic, and it said that it wasn't a violent times at all. Then they've got all this evidence of it was absolute. So there's like a big trading between the Angles and the Saxons and the Vikings.
For about 400 or 500 years until the Vikings started coming. Yeah, we had about 400 or 500 years of peace.
And up in York and all that, they've because they can do that ultrasound of the ground now and all that sort of stuff, can't they? And they've done. This guy's been there about 18 years, and he's like got a map. He's mapped this picture out, and apparently it shows all these little settlements, Viking and Anglo-Saxon, but they were trading because they'd gone underneath and they were sort of trading. And Tintagel wasn't actually Arthur's castle; it was like a major place where they would mine tin, and they would trade sort of all around Spain and everything else like that. Really, really interesting. I'm pretty certain it was called In Search of King Arthur, and it starts off at Tintagel, and they found this massive house and all that. But real interesting. Yeah, so that was something I did see, but that was made to.
I was into, I go through these phases where I had particular interest in Stuart's history, and I was really into King Oswald of Northumbria for a while. And so when I went to visit my friend in North Wales, I did drag her around the battlefield where he was killed. And it took her to
Oswald and all that.
Well, that's near Oswestry, but it's named Oswestry because where Oswald was crucified. So when his body was dismembered and all sorts of awful things happened to him. But I did drag her to where his body was allegedly left and the miraculous well. And she was not the least bit interested, but bless her, she did spend a day with me following in the footsteps of King Oswald and Penda and all those other sort of ancient kings.
Hanger and horses.
It's funny you say that. It's funny you say that because coming up later in the show, we will have we have an interview. Today is with Patrick, and we're going to talk about and essentially a bit of the interview talks to is things that a film buffery has dragged other people into, or things that we're really really into, and we end up dragging somebody around who doesn't understand, who doesn't share it, and I was just like, oh, for goodness sake, why? And he has quite a good story about that, where you have somebody doing like a massive. Essentially, you can just imagine the person with him doing a massive eye roll, going, "Oh, for goodness sake, why do I know this person?" So, the Last Kingdom, is that an ongoing thing, or is that something that have you finished the season now?
I finished the season. This is the 4th season, but there are currently, I think, 11 books and counting, and I think it's up to sort of midway point in the book. So there is potential for them to keep going.
Okay.
But it is an ongoing thing. Yeah. So they started off on BBC and then it went to Netflix. And so Netflix have produced at least the last 1.5 seasons, I believe.
Yeah. And so what would you rate the fourth season? How many stars would you give it?
I enjoyed it more than I thought I would because it is very, it's all about the desirability of Uhtred. And so, but I enjoyed it. So I thought it was entertaining and daft. So I would give it a 4-star.
Okay.
I would say it's certainly worth wasting an evening watching. I watched, I think, all 10 episodes over. I didn't watch it in a binge watch. I watched it over 2 weeks and like 2 episodes at a time. So, but I enjoyed it. Yeah, it was worth spending an evening on.
Is Bernard Cornwell the hornblower guy?
No, he's Sharp. Very similar,
Sharp.
but
That's it. Okay, yeah, Sharp. Yeah, okay, yeah. That's it. Because I know that there's a
and the Winter King.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the Winter King.
He's done loads of books. Yeah.
Yeah, and
he did a great series of books about Agincourt.
All right, because I know there's an author called Wilbur Smith who has a character called Shaun something in South Africa, and the way he writes this character, you can be like, this guy is just the person who he wishes he could be. So, he's kind of like the boa James Bond.
Yeah, but he is very much like Richard Sharp in that regard. Is that Sharp managed to be at basically every major battle in the Peninsular Wars. I mean, it isn't physically possible for like one regiment to be at every engagement, but Sharp managed it. You know, he was there.
He was that awesome.
He was just everywhere.
He was just that awesome. All right, cool. And for me,
one thing about Sharp, it's gone. One thing about Sharpie was they did Sharp's Waterloo, and he's how it happened I don't know because they're miles apart. But 1 minute he's at La Haye Saint, and the next he's at Hougoumont, and they're like,
he covers all of the battlefield.
Either end of the battlefield. Yeah,
he's at all the key events. He's at like the cavalry charge, then he's at the Hougoumont, then he's at the squares, and then he's everywhere.
All in the name of teaching kids history. Well,
yes.
Well, or living vicariously through someone who never existed. All right. So finally, the final thing of what our current viewing habits have been. So I've been watching I've been catching up with when you record things off your Sky Plus box, or in my case, my Virgin TiVo box. I've been catching up with a whole bunch of stuff. I'm trying to clear it out I set up a series link. So I've been watching a lot of that. But the thing I want to talk about is The Last Dance. The Last Dance, which is it's the documentary series about Michael Jordan and the 1990s Chicago Bulls. I think I mentioned it before. Mentioned it before. Yeah, and it finally, because they were only releasing 2 episodes a week, and they released the final 2 episodes this last Monday that went past, and I finished watching it, and I have to think that have you ever had a TV series where you know it's going to end at some point, and you get really annoyed about the fact that it has to end, because you know that the ending is never going to be as satisfying as the ongoing thing that you were learning about. Yeah, and this is a TV series that I totally had that with, and I think the ending is a little bit of a letdown. But I think a big part of the ending being a letdown is the fact that it had to end. if you get what I mean. So it was. I was just enjoying hearing all this stuff. I think the storytelling in it, as I said before, it's some of the best storytelling I have seen. The way it sort of linked everything together, says this happened, and it takes you back in time to this happened, and then this character comes in, and then that character comes in, and this is what happened with his person, and that's what happened with that person. I just feel like the way it linked everything together is masterful. It's really, really great, and you don't have to be a sports person to actually enjoy it. You don't have to be into sports whatsoever. Right. You know, honestly, the way that they focus on the characters, and there's a lot about it that it's kind of like what makes a champion, and I've been texted back and forth with my cousin about it because he's a massive basketball star, and he just sort of talks about Michael Jordan, and he says Michael Jordan's mentality is insane, and it is insane because this guy, there's a particular scene in it where he's playing a game with some guy, they're just sort of like, the security guards at the Chicago Bulls stadium, and it's where you flick a coin and see who can get the coin closest to the wall. And even in that, he is so competitive. And you can see when the other guy gets the coin close to the wall, the dark look of thunder on his face of, how dare you beat me at something? You're like, good Lord, this man's crazy. He's crazy, but he is. At that time, he was, and everybody in the documentary. So because there's a bit of a wrinkle in that this documentary, even though they don't say it on screen, it is partly produced by his production company. And so there's a little bit of hagiography where it just kind of goes, oh, he's amazing. Everybody's saying he's amazing. There's a little bit of that in there. And so once you take that in there, you go, okay, fine. But then there's some things that they put in there and go, Well, the fact is he was amazing. Whether he's the one telling you or someone else is telling you, he was amazing. He was the biggest star in the world at that time. I thought it was an absolutely brilliant documentary series, and the only thing I was sad about was that the fact that it had to end. And because of that, I'll give it 4 out of 5 stars. But if you can, catch The Last Dance on Netflix.
Okay, because I saw it, but I know nothing about that sport. I know nothing about the people who participated in it or the culture around it. So I thought, I don't know if there's anything in there for me. But it sounds quite interesting.
There is. One of the things my cousin mentioned is because while all these things were happening, we were in Nigeria and NBA hadn't come to Nigeria in a big way and we didn't really have access to it. So there's a whole bunch of history we missed out on. So for us, having to watch this and actually going, oh my word, this is what was going on in the background. We didn't know that. We didn't have any clue about that. It's absolutely fascinating to see a historical document of a time you actually lived through, but something that you just had absolutely no idea about. It's fascinating. It's great. And I would say, Sharon, watch the first episode and then tell me if you think there's something in this for me or not, because I think it's just brilliant. The storytelling is brilliant. And now we get onto the cinema section of the show. As we said before, what we're doing during the lockdown is we are speaking to cinephiles. We're speaking to normal people who just absolutely love, borderline obsessed with cinema. And this week we spoke to Patrick, who was referred to us by Sandy, who was on the show last week. So Shaun and I, because when she told me this guy is a film buff, he's loved film for a long time, he's 70 years old, and I was kind of like, okay, I think he and Shaun are going to have some overlap, and I need to get Shaun on this call with me. So Shaun and I had a chat with Patrick over Zoom, and the funny thing is, even though I was like, oh, we're going to speak to Patrick over Zoom, we're going to see what he looks like. Therefore, that means that Shaun can't play his favorite game. What do they look like based on their voice? However, Patrick's webcam was not working, so we did not get to see what Patrick looked like. So we could still play that game, and for the first time in the history of the show, because usually everybody who I've spoken to have been friends of mine who I've known for a while. For the first, I don't have a clue what they look like, so I can play as well. Yay!
Yay!
but
Yay! But you can go
the,
first then, Tos.
Oh yeah, but onto the serious stuff. First of all, we're gonna have to listen to Patrick, listen to what he has to say, and talk film. Here's Patrick. Thank you so much, Patrick, for joining us on the Netflix versus cinema interview, the lockdown interview. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're very welcome.
Now, you were referred to us, or you were, shall we say we were referred to each other, we were forcibly put in touch by our mutual friend, Sandy, who when I interviewed her for the podcast, said, yes, you got to speak to Patrick. You got to speak to, it's going to be awesome. He's going to love this. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your background and why it is that Sandy was so what's the word? Effusive? No, was so adamant that we speak to you.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess I almost literally grew up in a cinema because my mother worked in a Granada cinema in Acton in West London. And she worked in that cinema from, when I was virtually born until I was about 20. And throughout that time, I spent many, many, many hours in the dark, in the magic of the dark. I also got a job in my teens as an usher. So I actually worked there too, which was great, except if it was a poor film, you had to watch it 7 times.
Okay, yeah.
So that started my absolute love of cinema, and it's never left me. I've always absolutely adored cinema. I think I said to you earlier that I've got quite eclectic tastes in cinema. I like art house stuff. I like foreign language films, but I love Hollywood. I love blockbusters. And, I've got favorite directors like everybody that, I tend to like their films by and large.
Yeah.
So film is just very much runs through my veins, really.
Oh, cool. Good stuff with that. And so you said your mom worked in a cinema and you were pretty much born in there. If it's okay with you, would you mind us telling us what year that was?
I was born in 1950. So we are looking when I was like 9 years old. I think I'm right in saying it was the peak of the second peak of cinema going in this country. I think the first was in the 30s. and then it died away, and then it came back in the 50s and early 60s. I can remember queues around the block, around the cinema, to get in to see things like Summer Holiday with Cliff Richard, you know, and stuff like that. So that 1950. So we're talking about the late 50s and early and mid 60s until I was in my teens, and you know, that's when I stopped, you know, kind of spending a lot of time in there. But I've always loved cinema, always have.
I can totally hear what you're saying there. I think the trouble is, what happened is, in the sort of early-ish mid 60s, a lot of cinemas started converting to bingo halls and the like, don't they? I remember there used to be a lovely, the modern cinema. It was the modern, absolutely, you know, all old Art Deco with, like, you know, the Art Deco thing with the big sweeping column. I certainly do. Yes. And that turned into a bingo hall. The one thing I used to like was that you could have, during those days, they had things called continuous performances, where you could, you know, you weren't like kicked out. It wasn't like, you could go in and you could stay in all day if you wanted to, because you know, any time. And I think I've said this before on a few blogs with Tosin, is I remember one school half term, the film Zulu was on, and I think I must have seen that. It was half term, and there was 3 performances a day, like a matinee, early evening, and a late one. And I remember staying in and watching it through in glorious 70mm Panavision. You know, I mean, that was
No, I know the film well. In fact, that was one of the ones that was on when I was an usher. So I can still remember quotes from it, and I can remember Men of Harlech, which was the song that they sang as the warriors were coming towards them. And great film. Yeah. Michael Caine, of course, amongst others.
Yeah. So now, Shaun was saying about talking about these sort of things before, and the first ever podcast that we did together, because I think Shaun and I, we've been doing podcasts for. It doesn't feel like it, but it's about 6 years. We've been doing.
Wow, man.
Yeah,
crazy. That's crazy.
We've been meeting up most Thursdays in the last 6 years to record, to ramble and prattle on about film. And the first one that we ever did was one called "They Don't Make Them Like They Used To," which was done because we were on the Isle of Wight, and the average. We were on hospital radio. The average age of people in the hospital was 55. So we said we're only going to talk about films made pre-1980. And we would go and interview people and would ask them all these sort of questions and stuff. And so when Sandy was telling me about you, I was like, oh yeah, we need to speak to him. And I think like because I think you and Shaun, you both had your first experience in a cinema in a time before I was born. So it's pretty much an era that's dead to me, because you're speaking to somebody who never made it into a cinema until 1996.
Okay.
And so these are the questions that we love, and I think that there's so much that you can tell us about. I really, really want to go into like, you know, I think you could have a whole podcast on the usher stories of your stories as an usher in a cinema. You were already highlighting that on talking about having to watch the same film 7 times, even though it was a stinker. I have so many questions I want to ask about that. but for the purposes of this, we're going to try to keep it because I'm pretty sure we're going to get you back at some point, Patrick. We're going to get you back.
Okay, great. I'm game.
Yes. And so we're going to ask some of these questions. Shaun,
sure.
Shaun, obviously, as you've been doing, jump in whenever you hear something that gets you going. Every now and then, I just have to keep Shaun keep the brakes on Shaun, and then just sort of like let him go, because Shaun is like he's excitable, so like he's like oh yeah So if Patrick says something that gets you going, Shaun, go for it. But okay,
I will do.
But so Patrick, if you could just tell us, with the first question that we're going to kick off with is, what is the first film that you saw in a cinema?
Okay, the very first film I remember intimately, I was about 5 years old. It wasn't a contemporary film. It was an old film from 1939, an incredibly well-known film, and the film was The Wizard of Oz. And I can remember vividly the witch and the monkeys, the flying monkeys. And you know what? I had nightmares for for quite a long time because of that film. But there was something else about it because it's very magical. And, it's got the famous scene where it switches from black and white into colour.
Yeah.
When Dorothy lands, when the house lands from the tornado and she's in Munchkin Land. And I've got to tell you, there's a very famous quote from The Wizard of Oz. And I waited all my life. 3 years ago, my wife and I were in Kansas. And as we drove over the state line between Kansas and Missouri, I said to my wife, I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore. So it's a great film. I still love it. I still watch it with great regularity. Incredible performances from the Scarecrow and the Lion and the Tin Man. I mean, it's just an amazing film. So that was my very first film. I think it was mid-50s, about 5 years old. But of course, the film was actually made, I think, in 1939.
Yeah.
I think that happened a lot with. It's like the Disney films. I seem to remember all the way up into the 70s, because I guess there was no video or TV or anything like that. Even the old films from, I often remember school holidays. They'd show Dumbo.
Yeah.
The Seven Dwarfs, and I mean that was in the 70s. They were still showing the Disney movies of a weekend. So yes. I know what you mean. It's and the Wizard of Oz is like timeless, really.
Well, it's a perennial, isn't it?
Yeah.
So okay, I have a question about you waiting your whole life to go to Kansas just so you could say that line. I want to know what reaction did you get from your wife? Was it like, oh my God, this is what I married? Or
yeah, you got it in one. We've been together a long time. We've been married 40 years, and we were actually there because of her, because her grandmother was born in Kansas, and we were doing some family history. And but yeah, I got the kind of rolling eyes and oh no. But I thought it was a brilliant moment. I so look forward to saying that.
I can totally imagine it. I can imagine that you're just going to be sat down there going, you know what? I'm not even sorry. No, I apologize for nothing. Because it's a bit like because my favorite film, we've spoken about this before. My favorite film is The Blues Brothers with Dan Aykroyd, John Belushi.
Sure.
Yeah, I absolutely love The Blues Brothers. It's almost like something that got passed down from my dad to the rest of the family, and I ended up in Chicago, where most of Blues Brothers is set.
Yeah,
and it didn't even occur to me when I was going to Chicago that that's what the Blues Brothers was, until I got there and I opened up a newspaper and they were talking about some like a retrospective about Chicago and them filming, and I was like, oh my God, this is it. And I remember dragging my friend who actually lives in Chicago around the town to all these different places where they'd filmed the film, and more or less having a meltdown, going, oh, this is it. This is where the car fell apart. Oh, this is the Cook County Assessor's office. This is where Steven Spielberg comes out. And she's like, what the hell is wrong with you? And I'm like, you don't understand what I'm going through right now. So I get it, but I totally understand that you might have gotten a massive, massive eye roll when you said that.
Yeah, just a bit. Yeah.
It's funny when you go to places that have been in movies. I mean, I went to Bodega Bay where you know where that.
Sorry, Shaun, I can't believe you just said that. I was on the tip of my tongue. I was about to say, and I went to Bodega Bay in California where they did The Birds, and you came out with it. How about that?
I know. Well, I've had this with Tosin before. It's almost like I don't know if it's mind power or what. I don't know. But Tosin, how many times have I said I was just going to call you, or you said the other way?
And I've given you a call. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing. But yeah, Bodega Bay and Sebastopol and all around that area. It's quite amazing, really. I mean, I'm a big Americophile. I mean, I love it. I love America, and but that I remember that. But the house, the actual house where some of the Birds is filmed is Sebastopol. I think there's a house. It's not actually in the bay. The house is there.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, no, well, that was really spooky, that, because I was quite literally, when Tosin was saying about, going to Chicago, and I was about to say, well, I had a great experience in California, because, I mean, being a Hitchcock fan, and I go to Bodega Bay, and it's the Birds, how weird.
All right, you see now, this is
small world.
This is why I thought it would be a good idea for the both of you to talk.
Yeah.
Okay, Shaun, just one thing. You know your head for your head.
I'll say one more thing as well. I know it was a TV series, but it was a film, Twin Peaks, a place called Snoqualmie Falls near Seattle, not far out from Seattle.
Oh, okay, yeah. I remember Twin Peaks. That was David Lynch, wasn't it?
Lynchy. How do you feel about Lynch films? Do you like
mixed?
Mixed, yeah. He's hot. Yeah.
When they don't work, they don't work big time. But he's a very interesting director. I mean, very, very interesting. I mean, Twin Peaks was a trailblazer.
Yeah, yeah. How are you on like the older? I mean, I know they were more on TV. Was like the old Errol Flynn films, like Robin Hood or Gary Cooper, like or those sort of films. You know, the.
I'll watch films from any period, and particularly classics. I mean, obviously you've got some great sort of Bogart movies, and which people catch up on. One of my favourite films from the 40s, film noir, is Double Indemnity.
Barbara Stanwyck.
With Barbara Stanwyck, exactly, and Fred McMurray. And that is a great film. I've actually got that recorded. It was on the box recently, and I've got it recorded, and I'm looking forward to watching it again. I've seen it maybe 4 or 5 times over the years. But yeah, so to answer your question, Shaun, I do like old films a lot. In fact, one of my favourite films of all time is an English film from the 40s, which is Brief Encounter. I can practically quote Brief Encounter from beginning to end, because I've seen it so many times, and I love that film. I like David Lean as a director. But I just absolutely love that film, that kind of restraint and that sense of time. I mean, it's very dated, obviously, but, it's dealing with emotion and love. And I just think it's a great film.
It's still a classic, isn't it? Still a classic film.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I think, I remember a film, and I'm not normally into it, but I think there was a film, I think it was called Random Harvest, and it was where, or it might have been on Waterloo Bridge, but it was where, I think it was... no, it wasn't Tyler and Pat, someone like. But anyway, there's so much, isn't there, really? So, I mean, normally that's TV fare. You see them on TV, and I quite often see them and think, I'm going to catch up on that and see.
Well, we've got the wonderful channel Talking Pictures, which does a lot of films from the 40s and 50s, and I love that. And what I'm starting to do is catch up with films that I remember contemporaneously from the sort of late 50s and early 60s, and they come round again on Talking Pictures. I saw one the other day, very strange film with Hayley Mills called Sky Western Crooked.
Oh, good Lord.
Very strange film. Do you know that?
I don't actually know that one.
Sharon does. Sharon loves because this is the thing. All right, this is pretty much turning into an episode of our first ever podcast. They don't make them like they used to, because they don't make them like they used to, which you can still find on all good podcast providers everywhere. One of the last episodes we did of that, Sharon brought up Sky West and Crooked as we used to have the structure for that was that we would have 4 films each episode. So we would have a bona fide classic that everybody agrees this is a classic. We would have a hidden gem that not a lot of people know about, but we think this film deserves a bigger audience. We would have a patient interview. So the patient will either answer the question, what was the first film you saw in the cinema or your favorite film of all time? And then at the last we would have a exception to the rule, where we talk about a film made after 1980 but still deserves praise. That we still and one of the last episodes, Sharon brought up Sky West and Crooked with Hayley Mills as a hidden gem.
How weird.
Oh, good Lord. Oh, if only we'd found you when we were doing that show.
Yeah. And talking of classic films made after 1980, another favourite film of mine is Witness with Harrison Ford.
Oh, yeah?
Set in the Amish country. I think it's a brilliant film, and it still holds up very well today.
Oh, okay. All right. Now, before we go on, I just want to say one thing. Because obviously we had some technical issues with Patrick not being used to Zoom and not knowing how to get into the whole thing and everything like that. We are currently speaking on a Zoom platform that has been provided by, I think, Shaun, this is actually our first ever sponsor of the show that we're mentioning.
Oh, excellent. Yeah.
They haven't given us money. That's going to come in the future, Shaun. But but what they have done is that they've made it possible for us to have the Zoom facility so that if need be, we could phone in on a phone. So I'd like to thank Neil Chauhan of Pure Hosting. Pure Hosting in Coventry. They are who thankfully took a bit of his bank holiday, set this up for us, and then left to go make something in a tandoor oven. So, but Neil Chauhan, thank you so much. You guys rock.
Thank you.
Pure Hosting for all of your website needs. If you need websites for a small business, get in touch with Pure Hosting. Purehosting.com. No, purehosting.co.uk in Coventry. Anyway, now I'm going to move us on to the next question before Shaun asks something else that gets us down another rabbit hole.
Sorry, yeah.
So, what was the last film you managed to catch in the cinema before the lockdown happened, Patrick?
Well, do you know what? I did, because you told me what questions you were going to be asking. I did think about this, Tosin, and I'm afraid it's a toss-up of 3 films, because I saw 3 films in rapid succession. I can't remember the chronology, but one was Little Women. Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed, actually. I thought it was a a good solid Hollywood, and obviously it's a famous story, famous film.
Yeah.
The other one was 1917, which I found very, very powerful.
Yep.
Incredibly powerful. I mean, I'm a big, I suppose I could say I'm a Sam Mendes fan, but the other one, The Hidden Gem, if you like, very gritty. Was an extraordinary film called Motherless Brooklyn, with
Edward Norton.
It was Edward Norton, exactly, who directed it as well as starred in it. I thought it was a great film. I thought it was really, really powerful, very, very powerful.
Yeah, I think because Shaun, you caught Motherless Brooklyn out of the you reviewed Motherless Brooklyn on our regular show.
I did, yeah.
It's one of
Terrific
those
movie.
3, guys. I can't remember which one was literally the last one I saw.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's one of those ones that sort of came and went. Really, not many people were but it was because sometimes you get a film. That's the problem with the island is you'll get a film and it will just be like one performance in an afternoon on like 2 days or something like that. So
sure,
it's. Yeah. I mean, there's an absolutely brilliant one of my favourite films. Actually, up in the top of my favourite films is a British film. It's called 71. And that was like I was so lucky to catch that film, and I'm so glad I did. And I've seen it since, but it's a top movie. It's about in Northern Ireland, in the troubles in Northern Ireland, just starting off. And
I don't know that one.
It's worth a watch.
Directed by a French guy called Yann Damage.
Yeah, and it was shot on 16mm, so it's got that grainy 1970s feel about it.
Well, my son would be interested in that because he's an historian and he's very interested in the Troubles. He's always reading stuff about, Belfast and Northern Ireland. Yeah. And you could probably guess from my accent and my name, I've got Irish connections. My dad was from Waterford City in the south.
Oh, wow.
And so, it's part of my cultural heritage being, over half Irish. But yeah, so I'll pass that on. 1971. Yeah.
It's just called 71.
Oh, 71. Sorry. Yes.
Yeah, but it takes part in that, and it's just at the start. And it's really, really worth a watch. And I'd like to know, hopefully we'll have a chat again soon and all that. And if your lad had seen it, he can let us know what he thought of it.
Yeah, well, he's very good. He's very critical in the nicest possible way,
Yeah, it's a bit of an odd film because it starts off like a normal film and then it goes a bit.
Okay.
No, I wouldn't say Apocalypse Now-ish, but
but essentially, Shaun, this is a film that you saw and it immediately jumped up into like your top 3 films of all time.
It did, yes, it did. Yeah, definitely.
See, another film you reminded me of another film that starts one way and sort of morphs into something else. It's called Sunshine Over Leaf. Do you know that one?
Sunshine Over Leaf. That's a musical.
Sunshine on Leaf.
One.
It's a great film. Yeah. I think it's a really interesting film. That. But anyway,
yes. Okay.
We're gonna have to spend some more time together. Just
this is why I said like all these people who are interviewing in this lockdown period. I think we're gonna have to get them back onto the show at some point. But okay. So with that, the last film that I saw at the cinema was a film called Fantasy Island. I would not recommend it. Shaun,
Okay.
the last film Shaun saw was a film called Bloodshot, starring Vin Diesel, which Shaun gives his, oh, it was okay, really, which I interpret as it wasn't that good. and but from the films that you said, the last three, because this is spread over a couple of months, the films that you've chosen there, it sounds like you are probably a little bit more discerning in what you go to the cinema to watch.
I don't know about that. I'll go and I mean I like big blockbuster films. I like superhero film. You know what I mean? I just like a lot of I just like film. You know, it doesn't really matter. Like to think I am discerning with some things. You read a review and you think, oh yeah, that looks really interesting. The one I haven't seen, of course, is the one that won the Oscar, the Parasite. Which is meant to be very, very powerful.
You need to see that one.
Parasite, yes.
Parasite, yes.
Very, very powerful, apparently.
Go watch it, and don't let anybody tell you anything before you watch it.
Yeah.
Okay.
If somebody tries to tell you something about what Parasite is about, kick him out of a window. Don't let anybody tell you anything before you watch that film. Yes.
Right.
All right. Cool.
It's funny we should talk about that because that's like two different films, isn't it?
Yeah, Parasite is.
But would change around through. Yeah.
Parasite is you just do not know what you're letting yourself in for.
I'm not going to get a spoiler alert here, am I?
No, you're not.
No.
I've trained Shaun.
Yeah, because I will watch it. I will definitely see it. Anyway.
Yes, yeah. Parasite, great film. All right, cool. So going on from that, what you were saying about just loving film, and so next question is, why do you love going to the cinema? Why do you think going to the cinema is a thing? What is it about it? Why has it had this draw on us? So that even though there was a time when it had a monopoly on where you're going to watch something, and then everybody got TVs, and everybody thought that would be the death of cinema, didn't kill it. Then everybody got video things where they could video cassettes, and that didn't kill cinema. Why do you think it's a thing? Why do you love it? Why do we keep going back?
Okay, well, that's very easy for me. I mean, nothing for me beats the experience of cinema. Okay, it's darkened auditorium, sense of anticipation, excitement, live audience, sharing the emotion. That thing that you sometimes get with films that have a wow ending, either positively or negatively, and you kind of troop out of the cinema with all the other people and you're all in kind of stunned silence. You just can't replicate that. You've got to go to a cinema, and I'm going to say it, I just think the bigger the screen, the better. I'm okay about going to multiplexes. I'm okay about watching smaller screens. But you know what? Until you see it on a big screen. I mean, I went to see Brief Encounter at the National Film Theatre a number of years ago now on a Saturday afternoon. And it was an extraordinary experience because I don't think I'd ever seen it on a proper cinema screen. I think I'd only ever seen it on DVD on television. Of course, it works on television. Yeah. But seeing it in the cinema was fantastic. But yeah, it's all those things really. I think the big one for me is the sense of anticipation and excitement. You just don't get that when you're going to watch a film on television. You don't have that same, butterflies and oh wow, and of course you've made the effort. You've got ready, and you've made the effort to go to the venue, and pay your money and go in. And I'll tell you the other thing, I've got a secret vice, and my secret vice is I love going to the cinema in the afternoon, which I completely disagree with my wife on, because she doesn't believe you should watch films in the afternoon. And I said, well, if I was a film critic, I'd be watching them at 10 o'clock and 9 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. They watch them all day long. But I love watching films in the afternoon. I guess it's from all those years in the cinema with the torch, and starting at like lunchtime and finishing at 9 in the evening,
Cool. Big screens. You can't beat big screens, can you? You just cannot. The bigger the screen, the better.
Agreed.
And like when the period we're sort of talking of, 50s, early 60s movies, they did make those glorious big Panavision films, like
How the West Was Won.
How the West Was Won, and Fall of the Roman Empire and
Longest
Ben-Hur and
Day.
all those Longest Day, all big. And to see them, and I totally agree that if there's a movie you watch on TV, yeah, it's okay. You can actually go to the cinema and see it retrospectively, and it is a whole different experience. It's a whole different experience. So, I totally agree.
Yeah, because in Shaun, we do have a man who has traveled, and especially when you live on the Isle of Wight, traveling somewhere is a bit of a deal. You've got to get on a ferry. You've got to drive somewhere. You've got to make an effort. And you're talking about Shaun, I mean, because I remember you went up to London, to Leicester Square.
I did, yes.
Just to see, what was it, the Hateful Eight on the biggest screen.
The Hateful Eight, yep. Yeah, the Hateful Eight Roadshow, an extra 17 minutes. You've got a programme, you've got a break, you've got an overture at the beginning. I mean, I remember Battle of the Bulge when that was at the cinema. They used to play an overture. So, you go into the cinema and you sit down, and then all the music would be played like 10 minutes before the actual film started, and then you'd have a break.
So when you saw the Hateful Eight, Shaun, did they have a girl with a tray and some Kiora orange juice in it?
No, they didn't quite do that. That was still, I mean, you had to go outside or you could put orders in. It was a bit like the theatre where you could put your orders in and people go to the bar and get them, I think.
Because there was an intercession, wasn't there?
Yeah. So
intermission, sorry.
Yeah, there was an intermission, But I mean, the whole the experience. I remember going to see Empire Strikes Back at the Odeon Marble Arch, and they played the sort of refrain, and you got curtains that would open. They go, the music would play, and it was just like it was glorious. It was like, whoa! It was a proper experience to go to the cinema.
And it's quite interesting because that shows how the cinema kind of came out of the theatre experience.
Yeah.
Because you still have a stage and you have curtains, even though there's no people behind. There's a screen behind there, but it's the same concept, and an intermission and all that stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, there's the film theatre in Bradford, which I went to a couple of years ago, and in October they have what they call the widescreen weekend, and then the celluloid Saturdays. So it's one of there's three places in the world that can show Cinerama films. Yeah, I think one's in Seattle, one's in New York, and one's in Bradford. Can you believe it, Bradford?
Well, they had the first IMAX, didn't they, in this country, in Bradford?
That's right. And I saw how the West was won in original 3-strip Cinerama. I mean, it was a bit scratchy and it had been restored, and the guy spoke about it at the beginning, and you can imagine. And even though the film's not a particularly good film, it was an experience. And I swear that at the break, when you've got Debbie Reynolds singing "Away, away, come away," and old Gregory's looking, I was in tears. It really, it was an experience. It was an experience. So we should all go. Really, I'm gonna one year. I'm gonna.
Oh wait, we'll have that. We'll have a podcast trip. We'll have a podcast trip. I'll tell you what. We'll go to Bradford to what do you call it, the widescreen weekend.
Yep.
Okay, I'll tell you what. Okay, one year when we are all allowed back outside, once we're all allowed back into the cinema, Shaun, you organize it. We'll all go to Bradford and we'll record the podcast from the widescreen weekend in Bradford. How about that?
That'd be cool.
And we'll go out for a curry afterwards.
Oh right, yeah. There's we could do that. That'd be good. So widescreen weekend. I mean, once upon a time in the West, just fabulous on a big screen.
Okay, all right, cool. So, Patrick, we promised you half an hour. We are pushing that. I think we might have pushed that.
That's okay. That's all right.
But this is our final question that we're going to ask: is that what are you most looking forward to seeing in the cinema when they reopen?
Well, I'm really sort of sorry and embarrassed about this one because I have not earmarked any particular film at all. But what I would say very much on this is that, just the thought of being able to pick up the phone and book a ticket for the flicks and to go and to watch a film. I will watch anything that's released, post lockdown. As I say, I'm not one that's constantly on IMDb looking at all the films in post-production and, what's being released in August and all that kind of stuff, with the exception of the blockbusters that used to come out in the summer, the biggies. But
yeah.
So I haven't actually got an answer to that one, I'm afraid, Tosin. I apologise for that, but
No.
I just can't wait to get back into a cinema. I don't really care what's on.
Good. That's a good answer.
No, I think no need to apologize whatsoever. I think this podcast and especially this bit is not about having the right answer. It's about what cinema means to you, and it's about your personal experience of it. And if you don't have anything to look forward to, or if there's nothing that you've earmarked rather, then hey, I think just the simple fact that you're like, it's been taken away from me. Once it comes back, I will watch any drivel you put in front of me just to be back in the cinema. I totally get that. I used to say that if it looks good, if it's visually good, I don't care about anything else. If it looks good, it's got me. It's hooked me. Don't care about the plot or the characters or whether it works or not. If it's visually stunning, because it's a visual medium. Yeah.
If it's visually stunning, I'm all there.
Yes. All right. Cool. Thanks for that. And now since we've been doing these interviews, there's a whole bunch of questions there's a whole bunch of supplemental questions that I've had that have come up to mind. I'm like, we could ask this, which is why I think we have to bring people back. And one of them is, is your most unique cinema watching experience good? Your most unique cinema watching experience bad? And also, favorite cinemas you've ever been in? Those are the other questions. And with what you were talking about being an usher and all that kind of stuff, I know that's another hour of chat. I know very well. Full well, that's another hour of chat. So we hope to get you back on the podcast. Thank you so much.
I would love to come back.
Yeah, thank you so much for being on this time. Tell your son if you want, he can listen and he can critique us and tell us how we don't have enough things about Northern Ireland. No problem. We'll be fine. We'll be fine with that. But we are on Twitter at Netflix versus Cinema. That's Netflix via Cinema. On Facebook as Netflix via Cinema. And if you want to get in touch and you want to have your interview or you want to be interviewed about your views as well, please do get in touch and we would love to get you on at some point. But Patrick, once again, thank you so much for being on. And Shaun, is there anything final you want to say?
I was just going to say, Patrick, it's been a real pleasure. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you. I still can't figure out what you look like yet, but I've got about 4 ideas. So I'll write them down and I'll do an amalgamation of them, and then I'll let you know before I see you. But it's been a real pleasure to talk to you, and thanks for coming on.
Well, the sentiment is mutual. I've really thoroughly enjoyed this, and may I say to the pair of you that it's absolutely wonderful to talk to people that know about cinema, can reference things that actually ring a bell for me. So it's been a great pleasure, truly. So, and I'd very much love to come back. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick. We look forward to it. That was Patrick. Thank you once again for being on the show with us. So what did you guys think of Patrick?
He's a lovely chap, isn't he, really? It would be great to meet him in person, I think. Just sit down and have a really good chat. And one day, hopefully we will. We'll, have a chat. But, I've sort of... I got a mental picture of him. So,
okay.
So I think, which would be quite interesting. But
keep your powder dry what he looks like.
Yeah. No, I think he's a well-knowledgeable, nice guy.
Oh, right. But I did quite like your idea, Shaun, of what was it called? Is it the widescreen weekend or the big screen weekend or?
Widescreen weekend. Yeah. No, that.
So Sharon, what do you think about Patrick? What do you think about the interview?
Well, I thought it was a good interview, and the fact that he started off as growing up with his mum working in the cinema and then being an usher in the cinema, but wow, what an amazing first film to see, The Wizard of Oz at the cinema.
Yeah.
The impact that would have had, because it was a film that was a game changer in many ways, wasn't it? Going from the black and white to the colour.
Yeah.
All the characters that just are fantasy characters, but they managed to bring them to life in such an amazing way. And it still is an amazing film today. So I think, what an amazing first film to watch, to see The Wizard of Oz at the cinema as a child, and that would stay with you as it did for him, for your life long. So I can imagine that would be a good start to your cinema going adventure.
but did you get
And
what
the
I
fact that
meant?
he got to say the line of when he crossed from Kansas into Missouri.
Yeah, because I was thinking with that, I was thinking like when you mentioned the whole thing about dragging your friend around fields in Wales and everything, I was like, oh my word, it's like maybe we all have this tendency. Maybe we don't realize because we're into something, but we end up dragging people out. And it made me immediately made me think about his story about driving out of Kansas with his wife and saying that line, and I could just see the eye roll.
Yeah, okay.
I could see the eye roll that she gave him. Because I was like, oh yeah, I've been there. I've been there. Like as I said, dragging someone around Chicago.
Like your Blues Brothers tour of
Yeah.
Chicago.
Yes, it was. And but one of my favorite bits of that interview had to be the bit where Shaun mentions, was it Bodega Bay in San Francisco?
Bodega Bay, yeah. Birds.
The bit where you mentioned that, he was like, oh, I was just about to say.
Yeah, I know. It's one day we're gonna have to do sort of locations around the USA. I've been to a few places, but that was just like when he said he'd been there as well. Because I often say this, Bodega Bay. It's really, really funny though. But where they're actually in the house, it's not in Bodega Bay. It's in a place called Sebastopol, and it's nowhere near. Well, it's the same sort of area, but it's not near the bay. So it just shows you how with cutting in the films. But yeah, so
the miracle of editing.
The miracle of editing. I know I probably got cut off when I was talking about widescreen weekend, but
yeah.
I think we should go next year. Sharon, I did ask you to go. Do you remember?
Yes, last year it was just not a good time for me to go, but this year, hopefully my availability, well, not hopefully, if I still don't have a job by then, my availability will be quite, I will have much more availability to go.
The funny thing about this is that it makes me begin to think that there's something about Yorkshire, that Yorkshire might have been like some sort of cinematic hotspot for the UK. Because I was speaking an interview I just did recently with a friend of mine, Karen. She's the one who made the deal with me that she'll come on I said, come on the podcast and I'll catch up with Homeland and tell you what I think. So she lives up in Leeds. And the discussion started getting onto like, she was like, oh, we've got some amazing cinemas in Leeds. And like in Leeds, apparently they have like the oldest gaslit cinema in the world, which I don't know what that means. It's not in the world, but in the UK. And it's something like, it was the first cinema that showed some kind of film. But apparently that's like a sort of historic hotspot. And then you talk about Bradford, which is right beside Leeds, and Bradford having this widescreen weekend. So I'm seeing that when we're actually allowed to go back in, and once we can do all this sort of stuff, I say we do. I agree with you, Shaun. We have a Netflix versus cinema road trip, widescreen weekend, and we actually do the podcast from the widescreen weekend.
That would be something special. That would be something special. Yeah, it's great.
I know Patrick's in. Patrick said he's in.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, for me, the highlight. I mean, I know they do show loads of other films widescreen, but the highlight is the celluloid Saturday, because you still get the old scratchy print, because everything's so nice now, isn't it? All streamed in HD.
Stuff, yeah.
But and the last one we saw, Deaf Mute Heroin, with that X certificate sign, was just like, oh, it's just like, I don't know, it's just like, oh yes, it's a real trip back. So yeah, I mean, it's well worth it. It's well worth the weekend.
Yeah. So. It's funny because, Shaun, you've been talking about getting onto Facebook groups and getting into sort of like discussions of the Westerns. I joined one called Film Club. I joined the Facebook group called Film Club. And there was somebody on there who'd said something like, oh, a poll shows that 70% of people wouldn't feel happy going back into cinemas. Do we think this is the death of cinemas? And I was like, this is like exactly what we've been talking about over the last couple of months.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I can tell you that I've been thinking about this it's like, you can just imagine me sat there typing on my computer going like, well, I can tell you that I've been talking about this for a long length, and this is what we've come to. This is the conclusions we come to. And I was essentially being that snotty person that comes up and goes, well, this is the full argument here. This. Cinemas have to raise their game. Yeah, QED, thank you very much. But it was funny that I just came over and I was just kind of like, oh yeah, we have been talking about this. So but people have been talking about it. But I think widescreen weekend, go there, do the thing from there, because I still think, as I said, what this lockdown has shown me is that cinema there isn't anything that can replace cinema.
No.
There's absolutely a place for it.
Yeah, there's anything like the way Shaun's talking about it now, you can actually okay. We're on a Zoom call, and so Shaun has this angle that looks like right up his nose right now. I can see right up Shaun's nose, but but you should see Shaun's eye. Shaun went all misty-eyed when he was talking about, when it came over the celluloid Saturday, you can see the scratchy print and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you could just sort of see Shaun's eyes go a little bit misty when he talked about how much it meant to actually watch that print again. So I say, yeah, widescreen weekend. That's got to happen.
But referencing Patrick's interview again, he was saying about how cinemas obviously sort of grew out of the whole theatre.
Yes.
Culture with the stage and the curtains and the way a cinema is arranged, with the sort of the seats that go up and the way you're presented with the performance. And you think people have been gathering in theatres since before the Romans. The Romans had their colosseums and they had their amphitheatres, and nearly every big town had a form of amphitheatre, because there's something about a shared experience, about a shared entertainment that we've been doing for thousands of years. And though it's one horrible virus is not going to change that desire of sort of human behaviour to have shared
experiences. Yeah, I think that's a big thing. I mean, we mentioned this being Mental Health Awareness Week, and it's the fact that I think that's a big thing for people is realizing. I've got a friend who's he's in California at the moment. Simon, hi Simon, how you doing? You've got to start listening now to the podcast. And Simon is quite a sort of introvert. He sort of likes being on himself. It's like, and even he's going, yeah, I'm an introvert, but this is getting a bit crazy now. He's like, I'm beginning to crave human contact. So it's even the people who think they don't like people are beginning to realize the point of other people. So I think when we are actually allowed to go back into cinemas, and whether it's a drive-in or whether it's going to be the widescreen weekend, I think there's going to be a massive just influx as people just go there and be like, yes, never leave us again. Because
even if we're dressed in a hazmat suit with our own little screen here, we are still going to be in the same room.
I'll take that. Hazmat suit, I'll take that. I have to go buy my own one. I'll take that.
With a big dome so that you can maybe get your hand in and get your popcorn if you want to. They're quite roomy, aren't they, in there? You could probably put your popcorn inside, take your arms out, and then you'd be happy inside there.
I reckon that it should be a hazmat suit. I think a hazmat suit that kind of has like a tray in the middle, and then you get in there and like you get locked into your hazmat suit with all of your popcorn and everything all your gear. Like that.
So you look like Robbie the Robot.
Exactly.
But he's got like that big, nice, roomy bit. So you could have all sorts going on in there, couldn't you? And you just pull your arms in and hey, you're away.
Yeah, exactly. I was actually thinking that I should start marketing hamster balls for humans. So you can get
Zorb. Buy some disused Zorbs. Yeah, people don't want those Zorbs anymore. We'll just sit in one of them.
Get a Zorb and just roll around town. That's your own self-isolation pod. Just rolling around town, going, take that virus.
And then if you want to have a bit of fun, you can just bump someone with it. Yeah.
Well, yeah. We could replace cars with it. We'd just be bumping into each other. I'm going to bump on my way from London to Manchester. Yeah. Oh, okay. Right. Now, the thing is, with Patrick, there were just so many things that I was actually making a list of all the films that got name-checked while during the interview with Patrick. I
tried to. I lost my way halfway through.
It does. It is extensive. It is extensive, the number of films that just got name-checked as we were talking about it. And
I'm glad Sky West and Crooked got a name-check, though. I was quite pleased about that. One of my hidden gems.
Yes, because Sky West and Crooked. Okay, Sharon. Now this is an interesting thing. If you go on Spotify and you search Sky West and Crooked, that episode is the only thing that comes up.
Wow.
That episode is the only thing that comes up. I tried it and it's The Jerk, Sky West and Crooked, and I can't remember what the final thing we did was. I know we're back on the whole thing where we're instead of talking about Netflix or cinema, we're talking about they don't make them like they used to. But it's when he said, "Oh yeah, Sky West and Crooked," I was like, I think you actually heard the audible gasp from me on the interview. I was kind of
that's one of ours.
I was actually kind of, to be honest with you, when I was thinking, right, one of the things that I was thinking when we had the interview with Patrick Shaun was that I was thinking, man, we should have found this guy 4 years ago when we were still doing They Don't Make It Like These.
Yeah. It would have been handy, wouldn't he? He would have been handy.
He's almost kind of like, a walking history of cinema, or that whole thing. He's like a walking history of it, and as I said, I do want to get him back on, because as I said, with some of the questions I wanted to ask, or supplemental questions I want to ask, depending on how long lockdown goes on, is I want to know favorite movie viewing experience, favorite theater you've been in, all this sort of things, and I think he would have some great stories. So now, as we usually do, we shall end up with, what do we think they look like based on their voice? And Shaun, thank you very much for letting me go first this way. Now, based on his voice alone, based on how Patrick sounds like, I reckon he has the voice of a man who has held on to a good head of hair. So,
Yep. I'll agree with that. Okay.
Yeah, he has a voice of a man who has held on to a good head of hair, all the way to his 70s. So I reckon good head of hair. Because he's 70, I'm going to say he's grey. And now this is the bit where it might get insulting. I imagine him in almost kind of, that's it. You know the Werther's Original adverts.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
like a granddad type.
The
One, yeah.
granddad. I feel like his clothes are like the granddad. So if they Werther's Original,
It's cords and cardigan.
cords, cardigans, round about 6 foot tall, and because of that, full head of hair, all silvery, and all that kind of stuff. It's
Yeah, okay. Right. For me, I think he's quite tall. I think he's quite tall, and he's got a good head of hair. I don't think he's quite grey. I think he's probably one of these people that's sort of kept his colour a little bit. And I think he's probably I think he's quite what should we say? Quite live. Not like quite. What's the word? Live. Not
like
muscly and stuff, but yeah, but like sort
sinewy,
of,
tall,
a nice, but yeah, tall, sinewy,
gangly.
Sort of a perhaps a
He
bit
escaped
of a
the Michelin sprayage.
perhaps a David Niven moustache.
Ooh.
Sort of a bit, a bit David Niven-y sort of thing. But anyway, so that's my
David Niven. Okay, Sharon, what do you reckon?
Well, he referenced his Irish roots, didn't he? Said that he's got this sort of Irishness about him. So I was thinking someone, who's quite trim, clean shaven, greying. I thought greying. I was thinking, would he be curly headed or would he be more tamed? So I think he probably has an. So I was thinking, my thoughts were going towards like a young John Mills with a hint of Graham Norton about him.
Oh dear. Oh,
that is a combination if I ever heard one.
Yeah.
So he's got that twinkle. I think he's got that Irish twinkle, but with the John Mills, the sort of like that frame and that upright sort of. He's been raised in sort of England, but he's got that hint of the Irish. So I was, John Mills with a hint of a twinkle, an Irish twinkle.
Oh wow, that's a good combination, actually, isn't it? So it's probably a mixture of all of those.
I'll be really surprised that I think it'll be hilarious if he turns out to be like totally bald, 5 foot nothing,
With a full beard, like Father Christmas.
with a full beard and dresses like Mick Jagger or something.
Yeah. Whereas we've got like a golfing dad who used to listen to Terry Wogan. Yes, so.
Patrick, if you're listening to this, we apologize. We are so sorry. We are so sorry. Unfortunately, you've already seen us, so you can't have any revenge. I'm so sorry. So you know what we look like. All right, cool. One more thing I want to say before I go is so Sharon, you know the Zooniverse, that you were getting involved with the Zooniverse and you were doing a whole bunch of stuff on there. So superfan Nina was listening to the show and she got back in touch with me going, what was that thing again where Sharon was doing all the transcription and all that? And I was like, oh, I know exactly where this is going, because Nina's husband, Will, he is a massive kind of like, he's like a research buff. I think essentially it's not particularly, it doesn't matter what the topic is. If you give Will something to research and find out about and come back and tell you X, Y, Z, he loves it. He absolutely loves it. So Nina said that and I was kind of like, when Sharon mentioned it, my first thought was about Will, and I did think I won't mention it to Nina yet. I'll let her keep her husband for a couple more weeks, because now she's got to figure that between renovating a house and the Zooniverse, she might lose him.
Yeah. Oh, but if you explore Zooniverse, there's so much in there. They have about 100 current projects, and so if you want to look at star maps, if you want to look at underwater footage of penguins, if you want to do what I do, which is recording anti-slavery manuscripts or the war dead of the First World War, you can record their burial details. There's so much stuff, or even bird watching. If you're into birds, you can help record birds of the 1950s. So there's so much on there. So there's basically, if you have an interest, you'll find something that will tap into that.
Is there anything about the cinema?
Well, there was the closest thing was the Orson Welles letters. I helped transcribe some of those. They had the whole they produced all of the letters written to Orson Welles after the broadcast of the War of the Worlds, and they had handwritten ones and they had typed ones, and you basically transcribe them so anyone has access to those. But they were only about 2,000 of them, so basically the volunteers fell upon those, and they were literally, the entire archive was transcribed in 2 days. So I was lucky. I managed to do 5 of those letters, and some of them were absolutely fascinating. They were wonderful pieces of sort of social history. So, but you have some of if they're really, you think it's going to be a popular one, you've got to get in there quick, because basically there's thousands of volunteers all around the world who are going yes, and then they will fall upon it.
So,
but yeah, there is a humanities and there's an arts section. So if you're interested in the arts, you can go in and you'll find sometimes they put up different things.
Okay,
you can help.
I wonder if there's anything about the Old West. The Old West.
I'm trying to think. They did. There was some. There's the Australian West. They had all the records of Australian convicts. You could transcribe the records of all the Australian convicts.
Wow.
So you've got their record. You had their name, where they arrested for, all their convictions, where they're imprisoned. You had the entire Australian convict thing, and there's Anzacs. You can do Anzac records. So you've got to hunt for it, but there's certainly, but probably well, you can do the American Civil War soldiers. There's a whole archive on those.
I can just feel Shaun. I can feel Shaun circling the rabbit hole. Shaun circling that rabbit hole.
On the periphery.
Circling that rabbit hole, about to go in. But I'm not sure whether it's just me, but it might be an OW thing. But usually, whenever people say Orson Welles, my first thought is Oscar Wilde, and and so whenever they say Orson Welles, I'm thinking, oh yeah, Oscar Wilde, and then you're like letters to. I'm like, oh yeah, those must have been quite interesting, especially because at that time, it must have been quite difficult with him that he had to hide his homosexuality. Maybe put that in the letters, and then you say radio broadcast, and I'm like, what? Oh yeah, it's the other guy. It's the other OW. But I always for probably about 30 seconds, whenever somebody mentions one of their names, I always get confused with the other one, even though I know they're different people. But there's something about that OW that just sort of bamboozles me. Okay. Anyway, I think we will stop there until the next time, till next week, when I think our interview will be. It's probably going to be Arun, a friend of mine called Arun, who goes in depth into superhero movies and why they are so great.
Okay.
Until
next time, it's a goodbye from me.
It's goodbye from me.
We waited there. Okay, it's a goodbye from me.
Waiting.
See you all.
I love that. But you guys being so British about it. After you. Okay.
No,
at the same time. We're going to at the same time. Oh my word. All right, cool. Until next week, we'll see you guys. Bye.
Bye.